Welcome back to the show. I'm Meredith Root.
Alex Parker.
And I'm gonna make sure that I intro this episode in a very mature way. It's episode 69. It's the 69th episode of the show. And you know, like,
so we're going to be talking about sex. Just kidding.
yeah, that's not
all about some positioning and different flavors. No, I'm getting the eyes here.
Yeah,
she's signaling for me to stop talking, so I will.
You picked up on that,
and I'm far from an expert on that. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm not good. Okay, I'll stop.
Do I need to pause this?
No, I'm good.
Can you get a hold of yourself?
10 out of 10. Immature.
Yeah.
I'll say it myself before anybody can say it to themselves listening in the car.
But here we are. Yeah, so this is an off the cuff sort of, we were sitting in our kitchen, which has sometimes becomes our office. I think anybody who works from home probably understands that. We have an office, and it's a nice office. But then sometimes also the living room is the office, and then the kitchen island becomes the office because it's like standing desk. And then you get tired of standing, so then the dining room table becomes the office.
And then you have to plug your computer in, so you actually go to the actual standing desk that we have.
Yep. And you're like, well, I don't like it as much in here. So anyways, we were sitting in the kitchen office, and we were discussing this whole concept of goal setting and timelines. And if you didn't, we put up a post up today on Instagram kind of soliciting some discussion on the idea of how timelines fit into goal setting, if they do, and had some interesting insight back and forth. I mean, we have obviously our philosophy on goal setting, which is overarching and I think makes its way onto our social media, but also into our communication with the people who we work with. But we realize not everyone conceptualizes goal setting and timelines, specifically the risk of timelines like we do, and realized maybe this is worth discussing, at least to add in some context and nuance, which is my favorite word, to the conversation. So do you want to read the post?
Yeah, I have it up.
Okay.
So it was a tweet, and it says, we fundamentally disagree with setting hard timelines for goals. We think that more often than not, timelines set people up for disappointment. An exception is university degrees. What do you think the difference is? And this kind of was, we were trying to figure out what to post today. And I actually had a conversation with a client yesterday who told, she sent me 4 different goals she had. She's new to CrossFit, brand new to CrossFit, relatively fit just from other things, but not a lifter by any means. And she sent some pretty lofty goals. And so somebody who barely can do a pull-up on her own, she does them with the band still. And in 2 months, she has the goal of doing 10 pull-ups. And then there were some strength goals too, like squat 200 pounds, a couple of other things. And then there was talk about wanting to get a muscle up. And it's hard for me as a coach and somebody who can do all these things and knows how hard they are to do to say those aren't realistic. It's difficult. And then while I think it's amazing to set performance-based goals, I struggle with timelines. And so when we were trying to figure out a post, I brought this up to Meredith and said, well, what if we did a post on goal setting and timelines? And we thought, well, it'd be fun to kind of set it up in a way where people can get on there and kind of share their opinions on it, because it is, there are a lot of nuance, and there are it's very person dependent and goal dependent and that sort of thing. But I think our opinion, we came to the conclusion that we don't agree with timelines in almost all cases.
Yeah. And I think it's important to point out that the vast majority of the people who we work with or who join us, as clients. And I would also say that like a lot of our following are people who are more beginner, who are not necessarily super elite level athletes or human beings. Maybe they sort of struggle to implement things in their lives. And we also work with, a handful of elite athletes, and there's some fundamental, and I'm not saying like, I hate this narrative like, well, to be successful, you have to be an elite athlete and that's what success looks like. 'Cause it's not. But I think when you look at successful people in general, whether they are athletes or business people or students, there are kind of some fundamental differences in the way that those people behave, the way that they go through life. When you compare them to people who struggle a bit more to stick to commitments and, maybe are just baseline a little bit more distracted, and who just have not figured out what the right system is for them to see these commitments that they do, I think they do want to commit to. They just haven't figured out how to do it. And I think that timelines with goals pose a real problem. Sometimes for some people, I think goals by themselves pose a problem, because I think that people have
That's an unpopular opinion right there, I would argue.
I'm
sure people are like, what? No.
Well, again, and I think that this is part of a larger conversation, but I think that
we're about to have.
Okay, you want to go?
Other.
We'll go.
No.
I mean, just like to start with the goal setting thing. This could be an entire episode by itself, but to summarize this concept, people are capable of setting really lofty goals. Sometimes those are athletic goals. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're professional goals, school goals. But it's actually possible and common for people to use very complicated, lofty goals because they know they won't meet them. They know they won't, it's unlikely that they will be able to achieve it. So by overcomplicating what they're trying to do, they kind of give themselves an out rather than committing to, let's use an athletic example. Take a relatively beginner athlete, and that athlete, that person, because of what they've seen on media channels, and because they have a disbelief that they can achieve things. Maybe they say, I'm going to do an Ironman. And everyone looks at that and they're like, well, that's an amazing goal to commit to. That's incredible. And that's the feedback that they get. And it feels good to set a goal like that. But deep down, there's a knowledge that they're not going to be able to do it. They've never even run a 5K. They don't even have a bicycle. Maybe they have a Peloton. And so instead of committing to, I'm going to exercise 3 days a week, which is actually that would be a hard goal, because it actually is, it's an action goal. It's a process goal. It means you have to go get on a bike, or you have to go walk into a gym 3 days out of the week. Instead of setting a goal like that, they set the goal to, I'm going to do an Ironman. They have no idea what it takes to do an Ironman. So then they get, then you kind of push it off. Don't get started. And then it becomes, well, an Ironman's too hard. They don't do it.
Or it's like, I don't have the money to buy a bike.
Yeah.
It's there's so many factors. There's so many outs.
Registration was sold out.
Yeah.
And that's one example. I think there are other examples where people just tend to overcomplicate things as a way out, versus committing to something that's very simple and very actionable. But that's a topic for another time. So let's get back onto the timeline sort of discussion.
Okay, so my response to this question, and I think the point about the university degree taking on, for most people, 4 years. Most people go into university, most people who are 18 years old, they go into university expecting it to take 4 years. Yes, I understand some people do it in 5 for various reasons, but we're talking about the majority of people here. It takes 4 years. Most people can easily achieve this in 4 years. So I think, well, what is the difference between that and somebody setting a timeline for weight loss or for fitness, or for their career? And I think simplified it down into 3 aspects of the goal. And there's one, the goal, and this can be getting your high school education, your university degree, losing 10 pounds, running a marathon. Those are 3. So that's a school goal, a fitness goal, and a weight loss goal. So then there's the result. And the result is like, oh, well, how fast are you going to run the marathon in? How many pounds are you going to lose? And like, what are your grades? How well do you do within that goal? And then you have the timeline. So for university, it's 4 years. For weight loss, it could be, let's just say 8 weeks. And for the fitness goal, let's just say you're going to do a marathon in 4 months. If you want to set a timeline, the result needs to be fluid, which means if you want to set a timeline to complete a degree in 4 years, you have to be okay with the fact that you might not get all A's. You could do a degree in 8 years and you could have better results. You could come out with a higher GPA.
Because you're taking fewer hours per semester.
And you can put more time into it. But the way that it works, it's structured for 4 years. So you have to understand within that time frame, there are a ton of variables. How much you study, how interested you are in the classes, if you have kids at home, if you are a partier, if you drink and are hungover some days, if you have a part-time job to pay for school, all of these things. If you can afford books, if you know how to operate a computer really well, like all of these things are factors. If you want a really hard result, so again, let's say all A's, then the timeline might have to be expanded. So let's say for the example of losing 10 pounds, that is a hard result. The goal is weight loss, the result is 10 pounds. The timeline needs to be fluid because again, you're dealing with a variety of factors. Physiology is number 1. What is the calorie deficit you're on? What is your history with dieting? What is your mindset looking like? How compliant are you on the diet? All of these things. And then everyone's life circumstances are different. So I think that if you set a goal and then within that goal, you have a hard timeline and a hard result, the chances of failure, the likelihood that you are going to fail to meet those goals is high.
Yeah. I completely agree. And that was the whole point of this post is that it is so common in goal setting, when people set out to do something that usually is new to them, to say, I'm going to do X by Y. I'm going to do this by this time. And it's a flawed way to go about it because there's so much that's outside of your control. It doesn't matter what arena you're striving in. You don't control everybody. And I think like this, it doesn't like while we're sitting here saying it happens at mostly the novice and like sort of beginner level, I've seen athletes do it. I mean, we had a friend who was a games level CrossFit competitor, and her goal one year, she said this out loud to
at
both
the games,
of us,
right before the games started.
At the games, it was 2018. Oh, I just want to beat this person. Like that was her goal. I was like, oh my God, like you're going to hang your hat. You're going to like your success, not like it doesn't ride on how well you do in your events. It rides on how well you do and also how well this other person does.
Yeah. I think I also heard somebody say, another CrossFit Games athlete say, well, last year I got top 20. So this year I'm going to try to get top 15. My goal is to get top 15. And the reason why I stumbled over my words there is wanting something or I would like to is different than setting a hard timeline.
Yeah.
I would like one day to run a sub 3 hour marathon. That would be really cool. That is not the same as me being like, I want to run a 3 hour marathon in LA.
Yeah.
Like, that is very different.
Yeah.
And also, I think that we can also differentiate between a beginner and more of an elite. An elite can be an elite athlete or an elite business person where you have a lot of prior results to base goals off of.
Yeah, there's a huge body of data. You understand yourself. The people who are helping you, whether they're coaches or mentors, they also understand you. And so it's very possible to set well-informed goals and say, I think that you can do this or I can do this by this time. And that's part of being elite, especially in athletics, but probably in other areas too. It kind of requires that. It requires that you overreach a little bit. But the difference, and I mean, I've seen plenty of athletes who struggle mentally with loss, but I think, athletes who are well-rounded and experienced, they can fall short of those goals and carry on because they understand, like, if something comes up that's out of their control, they kind of understand how that fits into the framework of goal striving. But again, that is built on years of experience, tons and tons and tons of data, and having people around you who can provide their perspective and guidance.
Yeah. There is a difference between somebody going into a marathon who's run 50 marathons and saying, I want to break 2:15. And maybe in marathons leading up, they've run 2:17, 2:18, 2:16, 2:16:30. And it's like, for them to achieve a 2:15, a sub 2:15 marathon, and I'm talking like the elite of the elite here, they have to hit a pace and they have to start out at that pace and hold that pace. And a lot of these elite marathoners, they DNF. They're riding the line of failure every time they step out there. It's the same thing with lifting. You have a CrossFit Games athlete whose PR is 185 snatch. So maybe they go into the CrossFit Games saying, I have 3 attempts at a snatch. I'm going to start at 175, then I'm going to do 185, and then I'm going to try for 190. They could fail. There is a high chance of success, but there's also a high chance of failure.
Yeah.
Those are not the people we are talking about here. We are talking about a goal that somebody sets who walks into a CrossFit gym, has been there for a month, who can back squat 100 pounds and looks at her, the coach snatching 150. And she's like, I want to be able to do that next year. What?
And if I can't do it next year, then I'm going to be really pissed off. Yeah, I mean, that's it. It's understanding or not understanding the difference between like innate ability, the ability to do something, and the capability to do it. On a timeline or even on a given day.
Like, my next point is, and there were a couple of people who brought this up in the comments section who say, well, if you have a coach who can help you set realistic goals, which is what I just spoke about with the elite athlete, they are setting very realistic goals based on history. If you have a coach that can help you set those realistic goals, help you set a realistic timeline for those goals, and then temper your disappointment if you don't reach that goal within that timeline. And their argument was because the timeline helps motivate them. I fundamentally disagree with that, as we said in the post. Mm-hmm. Why not remove the chance of failure? Why even say I'll temper their failure? Why not just not set them up for failure? I believe a good coach is not someone who can help set realistic goals and expectations, but also the coach that can remove the likelihood that the person will fail and quit, and instead help keep them on track with the process it takes to achieve their goal, however long it takes, to not quit. That is what the coach's job is. Not to potentially set them up for failure, knowing that you can talk them off the ledge when they're about to fail.
Yeah, because what if you're not there to do it? Or you're not in the mood to talk someone off the ledge?
Or they don't tell you and they just ghost you.
Yeah,
which is not why my clients ghost me, I don't think.
No. Yeah, I mean, I think if anything, if you want to use a timeline to motivate behavior, you should say, just use it to get it started. Use a timeline to say, I'm going to do this by this time. I'm going to start this process on Monday, I don't care how shitty the weekend was. I'm not putting this off for one more day.
Yeah.
There's a timeline I can get down with. That makes sense.
Or like a 24-hour timeline. In 24 hours, I'm going to work out and eat 3 meals.
Yeah.
That's a timeline. That's a daily goal.
Yeah, and I think we live with timelines every single day. Or time, I guess I prefer the word time frame, like because we operate on a 24-hour clock.
Mm-hmm.
So that creates opportunity for checkpoints and for small daily goals every single day. But have an overarching timeline of I want to do this by this, and then having to be the coach to walk that person down when they don't make it, just because they don't have the experience of time, of multiple achievements. It isn't the right tool for a beginner. And that's, again, there are people who it is potentially the right tool for, but it's situation dependent and person dependent. And for the most part, the vast majority of people do a lot better when they remove timelines. Like I'm not saying that I am an exemplar for success, but I haven't set a single timeline for anything in my entire life, with the exception of I am going to graduate from undergrad in 4 years. I don't care if after changing my major, I don't care if that means I have to take 18-hour semesters or full course load. I am graduating in 4 years. But really, that was when I said that, I was fully aware of what that meant.
Mm-hmm. I
didn't say I'm going to graduate in 4 years, but I don't want to take more than 12 hours. That's insane. It would never work. For athletics, I never had the goal of I want to go to the games by this year. I never had the goal of I want to go to regionals and place this by this year. I had, let's see what happens. And then I said, if I come top 10 at regionals, maybe I'll do some things differently the year after, but let's just see what happens. I'm going to do my best, see what happens. And that's the same thing with running. And I know I set out, I do have a goal of a sub 90 half marathon. I do want to run that time. And I know that I have the ability to run that time, but I lack right now the capability because of injuries. Now, what if I had said, I have a race next month.
You actually do. You did sign up for one.
San Diego. I am registered for that race. And that was going to kind of be my first crack at it. So if I had said, I'm going to run a sub 90 half marathon by June in San Diego for this race that I have on my calendar, and that was the end all be all, I don't want to hear any alternate plans, this is the plan, how would I be feeling right now? I'd probably be feeling pretty low, because I'm literally doing run walk because of my foot injury.
Yeah, it's tough. It does require, I think, to use your favorite word, there's a lot of nuance in the language when setting your goals. Like I said, there's a difference between want, I want to be able to do this, or I would like to be able to do this. Like you said, my goal is to set, it's good to have goals for sure. And in some instances like yours, you have to set a timeline-ish, an event. I would like to be able to do it at this event. But in the back of your mind, there's a difference between that and in the back of your mind saying I'm setting this goal because that's going to help me structure my training.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's why I think goals can be really valuable. But again, it's you almost need to temper your timeline expectations. Don't temper your disappointment when you don't meet the timeline.
Yeah. Well, this whole, the idea for the post today came from a tweet that I read by Steve Magnus, who is an author.
Well, I just told them where it came from, but it was a group effort.
You did?
Yeah.
Where did it come from?
From my client.
Well, no, but I came up with the idea today. So you had, we've both talked about this because I also had a client this week.
It was a group effort.
Yeah, it was. But the kind of the idea behind the one, the actual post today was
it was more effort on my part.
Yeah, it was mostly Alex, and then I was just doing confirming research.
It was 70-30, I think.
Yeah.
75-25, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But you can, if you want to say 40%,
I'll just take 40%.
You did type it out. You did post it.
Yeah, for sure.
But I did have the first comment.
You were first comment, first like, let's go. Okay, so the tweet that I read this morning, I follow a few people, was by Steve Magnus, who's an author and co-founder of the growth equation EQ.com, which is it's an amazing newsletter, an amazing blog. And I find like I align with him and his co-founder Brad Stulberg kind of in belief systems. And they're big into performance coaching, like executives, entrepreneurs, that type, but also athletes. So Steve is a endurance runner, and for a long time worked with runners. So he has one leg on the athletic side of the fence, and then one leg on the professional executive side of the fence. But I really like him, and I follow him on Twitter. And today he had a tweet up that he's put up before, because I've seen it, and it says how to reach your goals. 3 steps. 1, set a goal. 2, figure out the steps to achieving that goal that are within your control. And I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
Within your control. 3, forget about the goal and focus on nailing the steps instead. 1 step at a time is how you make progress. And that's a universal concept. That applies to athletic progress, that applies to weight loss, that applies to professional advancement, that applies to school. And what he didn't mention is the timeline, but he's also written about this before. So I know that we are in alignment on how timelines fit into goal setting. But I think people get so stuck on step 1, which is setting the goal, that they forget to even figure out what the steps to achieving that goal are. And I'll give you an example. I can usually talk people out of this, that when they set a goal, like when they have a hard goal and a hard timeline, like part of my job as a coach is to talk people away from that way of doing things, because I know that it doesn't work. Like, especially for beginner, especially for weight loss. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking like major weight loss.
What's major weight loss?
Like a person who could lose 1/3 of their body weight, and that's kind of like 30% reduction in weight.
So like 50 to 100 pounds.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, and I don't want to get into the weight loss kind of weeds here, but when someone reaches out to lose weight because they're like over 300 pounds and they're getting bad health reports from their doctor, they know that it is in their best interest, like health wise, to do that. And that's why they're reaching out. But what it tells me when someone's over 300 pounds is that they don't have control over their nutrition. And that could be as a result of many things. It could be a result of they aren't educated on nutrition. They don't know what's in the food that they eat. Maybe they have emotional eating issues. Maybe there's some trauma that I don't know about. In this case, I'm not sure that any of those apply. I think it's more of a kind of getting complacent and lazy and that. And it's a dude. So I don't know if that matters, but men.
You're just a feminist, so you have to say it once an episode.
It's a man.
Poor men out there.
They don't listen though.
Okay, that's a blanket statement.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that.
I know of one man who once listened.
Yes. I can think of one male client that I have who's
No,
amazing.
I'm just kidding. Men aren't the worst, but some of them are.
Yeah. Reggie is actually my favorite client, so, and I know he listens, so he'll like to hear that. And he's not a typical man client.
We do, and we say this because it is not hard to notice some patterns in our
communication.
work, yeah.
And the way that information is received.
We do notice there is a difference there tends to be a difference between men and women. If you are looking at the grand scheme of them all.
Yep.
Not
mostly communication.
One at a time. Yeah.
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 Okay. So I'll get back on, back on track with this story. So like I said, I'm usually able to talk people out of kind of the goal timeline. Mm-hmm. And the goal in this case was, I want to lose 30 pounds in 3 months, which, like, to be fair, for someone who's over 300 pounds, not completely out of the realm of possibility.
And
even
somebody
though
who's like
that's,
never dieted before.
yeah, like no diet history, just a free feeder, like no history of restriction of any kind. Not possible, but when you look at the pattern of behavior, like the fact that there is no diet history, there's been no concern for nutrition, like it's going to take some work to just get the behaviors where they need to be. And so I said as much when we began this process, and kind of said, I literally think my first words were like, I don't really do timelines. I'm on board with your goals for like reasonable weight loss, and I think I can help you with that. But like, I don't do timelines, and I can assure you that you will do better in this process if you can like detach yourself from that timeline. And he refused to let the timeline go and the goal. But here's how it's played out. Macros, calories, kind of nutritional guidelines. Here you go, take them, like, let's get going. And the actual execution is problematic. Like building the actual behaviors. And I'm like, I hammer this home every time we talk. It's like, well, like, let's focus on the behaviors and the habits, and like, getting up early and getting in some activity and having a big meal, like for your first one during the day. And it's been pushed back on every single thing, along with poor execution, inaccurate logging, and just completely out to lunch on the weekends, just like out of control. And the one thing that has not changed, the goal and the timeline. So now you have someone who's getting really, really frustrated with their lack of progress, because we are approaching the 3-month timeline and we've only lost 10 pounds. But it's easy for me to objectively look at this situation and be like, well, we have not established the fundamental behaviors and habits and like daily actionable things to get there. So like, where's this expectation? But when they commit to something like this, and they don't put in the groundwork to actually figure out what the steps are, in their minds, they've committed to this thing and it didn't work. And it didn't work because of extremely inconsistent effort. But when people think back to their efforts, he doesn't think about going to the Flames games. He doesn't think about the weekends in Vancouver. He thinks about the days where he prepped his food and ate salads and went for a walk. And so in his mind, we've created this situation where we're working really hard towards this goal and not really much is happening. When I think had he just been willing to let go of the timeline and the goal and say, you know what, I'm fully committed to understanding the process, to making the process the goal, and to doing setting myself up for success by building habits, who knows? Probably be a hell of a lot closer to his goal than he is now. But the one thing that he has refused to loosen his grip on is the timeline and the goal.
Yeah. I mean, okay, the one thing that jumps out at me, and this is one of the fundamental problems with the timeline, is exactly what you just said, which is, and he's only lost 10 pounds.
I knew you were going to like that.
And that's how he sees it. And that's how you see it. The way I see it, if you didn't have a timeline, and this is it, nothing against your coaching, like I know you're on my side here, is if there were no timeline, then it would be, you've lost 10 pounds and you're not even doing it. You're only doing some things sometimes, and you are still making progress.
To be fair, I have made that exact point.
Yeah, let's keep going. Let's lose another 10 pounds. Let's dial it in even more, and maybe we can lose 12 pounds in the next. You don't know where the ceiling is. My next question, or my next point, I should say, is with the timeline, when he loses 30 pounds, what happens? Even if he were to lose 30 pounds in 3 months, what happens in the 4th month?
Vacation.
Exactly. And then he's back where he started, which is a fundamental issue with weight loss.
Goals.
It's setting a goal weight loss. There's no talk ever of well, what happens after the goal? People it's this obsession with this number, getting in, or a size of a dress or whatever it is, and then they achieve it, and then it's like they haven't established habits. They're so focused on the outcome that they don't know what the process even was. They don't know, like, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, they have not established what their why is. Why do you want to lose weight? I don't think people even know why half the time.
Oh, are we going to do core values talk?
I don't want to get into the whole core values, but I think it is pertinent to this argument.
Okay.
If you establish why you want to lose weight, why do you want to run a marathon? Another, like, the running fitness thing, or even like the weight loss thing, it's like these 30-day challenges. Oh, it's a kickstart. We're not cars.
Yeah. You can't jumpstart.
No, we're not cars. You can't jumpstart a car, which I don't even know what that means. I just know it doesn't apply to humans.
Yeah.
It's like, I know more people who run half marathons and then never run again than people who run half marathons and are like, I'm in love with running. Because it's so difficult for them to complete the half marathon. It's so hard. It impacts their life so much because they've never run before and they've decided to run a half marathon or a marathon or a triathlon.
Yeah, and the key to sticking with like a running program, or actually, let's be more general, the key to sticking to any exercise program or like nutrition program for that matter is it should feel easy. It should not feel like a great deviation or something that's like super hard all the time. And endurance runners get this. Like, it's where the 80-20 rule came from. Like, the majority of the time when you're out running is easy. And I'm talking like you should be able to have a full ass conversation with the person who's running next to you without having to be like, hey, Alex, how was your weekend? Like, not that kind of conversation. Like, hey, Alex, how was your weekend?
It was good. Thank you.
Oh,
how was yours?
Great. Yeah. Well, Ivy's a little sick, but
yeah,
like that. That is how you build the base for running or any exercise, and how you make sure that when you do finally run a half marathon, that you look forward to running to the next one, and you're not like, well, that was horrible, I'm just gonna check that off the list.
Yeah.
But that's how people go through life. Like, what the hell is this 75 hard thing? What do you do on day 76?
Oh, God. Okay, I have two stories, and it kind of aligns with like setting hard goals and setting timelines. So I had this friend of mine who I met through CrossFit when I first started, and she was on a team with me. She's a mom, just like a really great person, very fit, obviously. She was like competing in CrossFit. She had competed in Olympic weightlifting for a while, and she was in Maui, and she was doing a workout on the beach. Like, she was there with her family, and she went off and did like a 20-minute beach workout. And I guess somebody was like, wow, you're so fit looking, like you're so strong. Like, what are you training for? And she was like, life.
Yeah.
Like, there was no specific goal. She was just doing it for the goal of being fit. Like, that is a legitimate goal. It's just to stay fit, stay healthy, to be able to do something at a whim. Another, instance talking about timelines is I had a call with a inquiry. She wanted to know more about the program and how it was going to work with her life. And she said, I've done macros before and they didn't work. And I was like, tell me more. Like, what didn't work? She's like, well, there was no change. And I probably did. I was on them for 2 months. And I was like, well, for a lot of people, it takes long. Like, what does work even mean?
Yeah.
Any sort of physiological change takes longer than 2 months. I mean, in an ideal world, you could lose maybe, like 10 pounds. That's a pretty big change. But for most people, that means it didn't work or didn't go fast enough. And then we started talking about like changing for nutrition and changing like training and building muscle and all these things. And like what's the timeline on all this? What's the timeline? When should I expect results? How long should I commit to this for?
Indefinitely.
And my answer, I was kind of like dumbstruck, and I was like, I like life, like your life.
You said that? That's amazing.
And she did. She was like, you're right. You're right. Like, she didn't end up signing up, and she still is a little bit like, we're still working on the getting away from setting these timelines and just kind of like keep going, like establish this new lifestyle. doing the things that are eventually going to get you there and stop worrying about it. But she was like, you're right. That makes a lot of sense. I did it kind of explain that this isn't about a start and a stop. This is about like small, it's like just, I wouldn't even say starting, because starting is like a change. It's like the beginning of the rest. I don't want there to be like a break in the timeline even for starting.
I know.
It's like a rolling start.
It's
you just
sort of
speed
like,
up a little.
It's like instead of...
You make a turn and you speed up a little.
Instead of jumping into the pool, you go into the end where you just kind of wade in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like a beach
I love
entry.
that metaphor.
Thank you.
But yeah, it's not like there shouldn't be this change. Like you just go faster. And then all of a sudden you're speeding down the highway in a couple years.
Yeah. And like, honestly,
in a Ferrari with like the best gas you can buy, premium. The most expensive gas, I should say.
What do you think's the highest octane you can buy?
I have no idea. All I know is the prices go higher.
They do.
And the Audi is the most expensive one, which is why I drive the truck.
Yeah.
Which I know you're going to say something about how the truck is a gas guzzler, but I just...
Oh, it ends up being completely negligible.
Okay. I have 2 more points.
Okay,
but
maybe.
You can speak.
Well, no, maybe I'm guessing I'm guessing my point will fit into your point somewhere.
Probably.
So you can go ahead.
Okay. Have we talked about procrastination?
I touched on it, but we didn't talk about it.
Okay. So here's another point against timelines, because I'm all about making points and arguments. And it's nice that there's no one here to debate me.
Do you want me to do that?
I mean, you can try, but good luck.
Right.
Okay, so my 10th argument against timelines is the concept of procrastination. We've all done it. It doesn't just happen with school papers.
Or laundry.
Or cleaning the house, or doing the dishes. It happens with fitness. It happens with lifestyle. It's like, I'll start Monday. That's procrastinating.
Mm-hmm.
You can set a goal to lose 30 pounds in 3 months. Let's take that. And you can say, I've got 3 months to do it. That's 90 days. What's one day? What's one weekend? I still will have 7 more weeks after this, or 11 more weeks. I still have 5 more weeks. So I could lose 5 pounds a week. I mean, somebody doesn't know. Okay, well, maybe that happens with weight loss.
Well, yeah. So I'm going to interrupt you there. The same guy that refuses to relinquish the timeline or the goal, like the Flames are in the playoffs, so lots of hockey games and beer and burgers, and the goal for this week was to offset that, double down. Yeah,
that's another thing, is like, I'll just, like, it's exactly the same with the school paper and an exam. Like, all of a sudden it's the weekend before it's due on Monday, and you can't go out with your friends, and you're missing an event because you have to stay home and cram your ass off and lose sleep. And honestly, you come out of that exam or that paper and you didn't learn a damn thing. Cramming actually is not good for your memory.
And you got a B-.
Yeah.
If you're lucky.
Like that, there's a hard timeline. And like, does it change your behavior? Does it motivate the person to like start studying earlier? No. I mean, it does for me. I just wasn't that person. But I procrastinate in other areas of my life.
Yeah.
I think the same goes for fitness. I mean, I know people who sign up for a marathon having absolutely no idea what you have to do to run a marathon without your body imploding. And it'll come down to the last 2 weeks and they're like, well, shoot.
Yeah.
And somebody made a point on our thing like, oh, well, you can just adjust the timeline. But why would you set something up and say, I'll just adjust it if I have to?
Well, I think
I'll just do the next event.
There's legitimate reasons to do that, such as injury, but not sticking to your commitment is not a good reason to do that. And not sticking to your commitment kind of highlights that, like, maybe it was the wrong commitment to make. Maybe it was the wrong time to make that commitment. Maybe it's just too hard for where you are in your life, or like maybe you don't have the right people supporting you.
Yeah. I think we've talked about this, I don't think on the podcast, but on Instagram, the difference between I'll try and I will. And like setting yourself up for something where you're not 100% sure, you're not really committed to it. It's I'll try. And I think there's like knowing that you can postpone it or you can change the goal. You can easily say, I'll try. It's an out. Why not set yourself up for something? I will. I can say I will run the LA Marathon as long as I don't get injured, like those things out of my control.
Yep.
I will run the LA Marathon. I will not say I will run the marathon in sub 3 because I don't know if I can. I will run the LA Marathon. I will train 4 or 5 days a week. I will hit as many training runs as I can.
Yep.
Like, I will make sure that my coach knows what my schedule is so that I am setting myself up for success on a weekly basis. Like, when I set a goal for the week, I am 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 sure that I can hit that goal.
Yep. And that's how, like, and that's the reason why a lot of times when we ask people to set goals for the week, the next question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you can hit this goal? And when someone says, which is frequent, 6, I say, let's set a different goal because 6 is not good enough.
I had some lady say, I think I can do it. I'll say 5 out of 10 on my goal. I think I can do it half the time this week. And I said, well, why don't we set the goal to do it 4 out of 7 days, and so that you're 10 out of 10 confident that you can do it. And it was like, then you come out of that being like, hey, I did it. And you go into it with way more confidence, so the chances of actually doing it are higher. If you feel like the chances are low to begin with, why even try?
Yep. I mean, that's the whole thing.
It's like, and I keep saying it's like, but when I have a training run and I have a goal and it's, run a 3:45 kilometer, 3 minutes, 45 seconds. And I'm like, dang, that's tough. But I've done 4. I think I can do 3:45. I'll start at 3:45 and I'll hang on for as long as possible. My coach did it. He knows what my expectations are. My coach told me I think I can do it. And that's like, you kind of get that extra boost of motivation.
Yeah.
It's within the realm of possibilities. You're confident you can do it if you put in the effort. If my coach said, I want you to run a sub 3 kilometer, and I say, what happens is, most likely, is I will if I can't run a sub 3, I will end up walking.
Yeah.
Whereas if I do a sub 3:45, even if I don't hit that, I'll run like a 3:46. It's like, I think, do you know what I'm getting at here?
Yeah, because then
it's like when the goal is too lofty, you don't even, it's like you don't even try to come close. You're just like, oh, fuck it.
I can't do it. And that's like,
and then you walk.
Do you remember what I said at the beginning of the podcast? How goals, like setting a goal that is too lofty or too complicated gives you an out, and a very early out at that.
Yeah.
So you're going to miss it, so you stop. Whereas like you could have run a sub 3:45, no problem. And that's still a really good, like, that's a really good pace.
Like I think a lot of people would end up just like being like, they're a quarter of a kilometer in. They're like, well, I can't do this. And they get frustrated and they quit and they walk home. Instead of it being like a more reasonable goal. And even if they don't get it, it's like, I was close. I think I can do it next time.
Yeah. So I was trying to find this quote, and it's by Adam Galinsky, who's a professor at Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management and writes for the Harvard Business Review. And he wrote a book called Goals Gone Wild. And I was trying to find this because I have it on my list.
I like the sound of that book.
Yeah. So he argues that goal setting has been treated like an over-the-counter medication when it should really be treated with more care, like a prescription strength medication. He argues that goal setting can focus attention too much or on the wrong things and can lead people to participate in extreme behaviors to achieve the goals, or worse, get them in a pattern of failing to achieve their goals.
Which brings me to my final point.
It brings me to my point.
It's probably the same point.
Are you going to talk about the cycle of negative progress?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll intro that for you.
Okay, do it.
So,
take it away, girl.
Okay. So like we said at the beginning, like goal setting and timelines and striving are a little bit dependent. And like Adam Galinsky said, they should be treated with care, because for some people, setting a lofty goal or a stretch goal is like something that there's the high potential that it doesn't work out, but it pushes the person in the right way so that maybe their eyes are open to what they can achieve. Like, that's fine, but it takes the right person.
I think there's a theory.
Is there a theory?
Yeah.
Do you want to speak about the theory?
I don't know. I know it has to do with, like, I've seen it. I've heard it talked about in the realm of like fitness programming.
Yeah.
Where it's like, if the person feels like they can, kind of like the running thing I just said, if the person feels like they can achieve it, but it requires them to push a little bit out of their comfort zone, it's motivating.
Yeah, it is.
But it's not so lofty that it's demotivating.
But that, like, just think about how carefully you would have to set that goal for the person.
Yeah.
It's a lot different than setting a goal to run a marathon, just period, or run a marathon at a certain pace for someone who has never run a marathon before. That's not a good goal.
Yeah.
Unless you set a really low bar, which again, like, then are you leaving achievement on the table? Probably. And so again, that's the risk of timelines and goals. But the value in very small, very attainable goals, daily process-oriented goals, is that people have a much higher likelihood of committing to the doing of something and then actually seeing that commitment through. And seeing that commitment through, even if it's a really small goal, and I am talking like, bro, I want you to go for a 30-minute walk once a month. That. For someone who isn't in the habit of moving their body at all, like, that is how low the bar needs to be set at first. A really easy daily goal, maybe like, I'm like, stand up at your desk for 30 seconds every hour and stretch. I don't know. Seems like a pretty easy daily goal. So anyways, then you get into the habit of actually committing to something and seeing it through because it's so easy to do. And so then success, following through with your commitments, becomes a habit.
Just like James Clear says.
Yeah, does he? Mm-hmm. It does sound like something.
And he talks about, not even, for some people, sorry to interrupt here, but just going to the gym, not even going into the gym and doing a workout. He will tell people, just go to the gym. Stay there for 2 minutes and then go home. That's where he recommends some people start in building the habit of going to the gym. Yeah.
But like for some people, they can't, they're like, no, that's not enough. I'm like, well, what are you doing right now? Nothing.
That's why some people, they do like 7 days straight and then they're so sore or they're so exhausted or it impacts their life so much and it pisses off their husband and their kids wonder where their mom went, and then they never go to the gym ever again. That legit happens.
A tale as old as time. So yeah, you can see when people set goals or timelines, since we're on the timeline things that are too aggressive or too lofty, they run the risk of getting into a pattern of not seeing those commitments through because they're just too difficult. So again, goal and person dependent here, but the risk of setting a goal and a timeline needs to be weighed against the potential benefit of doing so. I think for people that, especially for people who are not in the habit of seeing their commitments through. I personally think starting out, the risk of setting lofty goals and timelines way, way, way worse, like way more significant than the potential benefit. And that is how you get into a cycle of negative progress.
Yep.
By doing that by committing and then not following through. It's the act of commitment without follow through, the act of commitment without success.
Yeah. I mean, we run into this a lot in the weight loss realm. And I'm not even talking extreme weight loss. I'm talking like 20, 30 pounds. And it's like, it's people, and I don't want to stereotype here, but it's many times it's women who come and they've tried every diet on the sun and still can't lose weight, or they've lost weight and gained it back. And that's happened so many times that this is like, they will say, this is my last ditch effort, because they've failed so many times that they don't even believe in themselves anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, they question everything along the way. I only lost 1 pound this week. I'm like, that's ridiculously great. Let's keep going.
I'm so this is amazing.
No, seriously. I'm like, that is totally good progress. What's the problem here? And they're like, well, it's only 1 pound. I'm like, it's like they part of it, I think the failure is like, they haven't actually failed. Like, they've achieved success. They don't even know that it's success because they've set timelines. They've set unrealistic goals, and that's not their fault. We've talked about this before. This is like the society that we live in.
It's
Instant
hard-coded.
gratification. It's what we see on magazines. It's what we see on TV. It's what our friends tell us. You don't see your friend walking around saying like, I lost 5 pounds in 3 months. But you do hear your friend yelling from the rooftop who did keto and lost 30 pounds in 30 days. But you never hear from that friend ever again.
Because they're dead.
That too. Literally and figuratively. But they're probably too embarrassed to talk about it ever again. Because it's like, now what do they have to do?
Yeah.
They have to walk in and they've gained that 30 pounds back. Like that's just an example. And I think we all have that one friend who's, done something extreme, lost the weight. But I think you lose faith in yourself to be able to accomplish something. And I think what we do, and I'll shamelessly plug our program, but there's a lot of like reassurance and kind of reprogramming of somebody's brain into saying like, hey, 1 pound is good. Let's like keep going.
You got to celebrate the shit out of that 1 pound.
It's like, you only lost 10 pounds? No, it's you lost 10 pounds.
Yeah.
Great job. And like, we haven't even scratched the surface. So like buckle up, mister.
You're still eating and drinking your ass off.
Yeah.
Sir.
But I'll say like, hey, like, you lost 10 pounds and like, you're still living the lifestyle that you want to live.
Yeah.
Like, hey, maybe 10 pounds, maybe this is the pace we need to go at for it to fit into your lifestyle. It's just, yeah, that the negative progress is, I think, I saw it somewhere on Instagram and I was like, I'd never heard of it before, but it explains so much.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And just the cycle that people get stuck in.
Yeah.
Which is really sad.
Or like one of your friends who's a nutrition coach, a great athlete, she was struggling with running. Mm-hmm. And she was like, every time I try to go out, I run 5K and my calves and my feet cramp up and my knees start hurting. And for her, which she didn't even know, because she's this athletic person in great shape, values her health, didn't even know like 5K is too much for you when you don't run. Like, you need to start with like 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off for 5 minutes.
And that's
and
exactly,
then go from there.
That was her first run.
Yeah. And now look, she's running 5K.
Yep.
But it took time. And sometimes, I think I will say that we don't want to sit here and say, don't set goals, don't set timelines, don't do this, don't do that. That's certainly not what we are saying. And there can be value in somebody who knows what they're doing, or who has experience with other people to help. But I think whatever goal you set, ask yourself the question, like, how confident am I that I can achieve this goal? And is it absolutely necessary for me to put a timeline on it?
Yeah.
And if it's not, then take the timeline away.
And just focus on the steps that you need to take every single day to achieve that goal.
Yeah.
And then you might actually achieve it like sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you will have achieved more by the time your timeline rolls around.
Anytime you set a bigger goal, like running a marathon or doing a triathlon, immediately go back to like, all right, what do I need to be doing starting today to achieve that goal in the future? Yep. And then forget about that goal and focus on the daily goal.
Yep.
You've never set a timeline goal? When you like CrossFit Games, you never had?
No, I had hopes. I had the desire, especially in like years where I felt very capable. But I never had I don't even know. No, I'm not. I did have a goal to go to the CrossFit Games, but I never attached a timeline to that goal. It was just something that I really wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And ironically, I mean, I had a number of successful training years, and it wasn't until 2018, I think, partially it's the Alex effect when I moved here, and I became very, very focused on the daily stuff and, getting my training in every day and focusing on nutrition and sleeping and just getting very, very obsessed with my routine and the things that I had on my list every day. And I actually took my eyes off of the CrossFit Games. And that's the year that I went.
Yeah. I think I'm hearing this a lot from CrossFit athletes, partially because we work with a couple. But also I'm very aware of what people are putting out on Instagram. And it's easy to get caught up and say like, oh, you know, Tia, her goal is to win and she does it. So like, what's wrong with that? And same with Matt Fraser, and same with, you know, Pat Vellner or Ricky Gerard wants to get on the podium. And, you know, so-and-so bubble athlete wants to make it to the CrossFit Games. And that's what they put out there. Like, I want to win. My sights are set on the top. And I think that sends a bit of the wrong message, because what I know about a lot of these athletes is they have mindset. A lot of them have mindset coaches, and a lot of them have, over the past few years, have shifted away from my goal is to qualify for the CrossFit Games in 2018, in 2019, and or it's my goal is to go into this event and perform to my potential in each and every workout. Like, stop. I think a lot of, especially bubble athletes, they say I would like to make it to the CrossFit Games, but my goal is what is in my control.
Yeah.
It's paying attention to my training, my recovery, all of the things that are within my control, my sleep. I'm hiring coaches. And then going into the weekend with like, my goal is to do the best that I possibly can in each event and execute as I trained, as I practiced. There was one athlete that we worked with briefly, and she said, she worked with a mindset coach, and she said, and this mindset coach had actually qualified for the CrossFit Games and was telling her his experience. And she was shocked by this. And this is somebody who's failed to make it to the CrossFit Games for multiple years in a row. And this mindset coach told her, I made it to the CrossFit Games as soon as I stopped trying to make it to the CrossFit Games.
Which was also my experience.
Yeah. I never even thought I went into regionals. I didn't even think I stood a chance.
Yeah.
But I went into each and every workout. And I think that almost increases your chances, because if you go in with, and I'm just like, I'm drawing parallels with like golf and everything. If you go in and you have a bad workout and you're like, well, I'm not going to make it. But you don't know what everyone else is doing. You don't know who's going to shit the bed on the next workout and you could, you know, come third.
Yep.
You don't know who might get injured. Like, you know, I'm not wishing poor on anyone, but you just don't know. What you need to do is leave that workout alone and go to the next one. Same with golf. You could get a triple bogey and be like, well, I'm 3 strokes down now. But you could birdie the next 3 holes and be back at even. You don't know.
Yeah.
But if you let that one golf hole impact your mindset going into the next 3 holes, yeah, you are done.
Yeah.
But that's outcome thinking.
It is.
And not like effort.
I'll talk about, just really quick. So I work with Paige Semenza, who is a 2 times games athlete. 3?
Yeah, she went in 2019 for sure, because we were demo team that year.
She went my year. So 2018, 2019.
Did she go last year?
Did she go last year?
I don't know.
I can't remember. I think she did. Anywho, no, she didn't. She didn't go last year. But I've been working with her for a number of months, and she started this journal. So just like a couple of things about her. She really looks like she's really good at putting blinders on, just like generally. And partially that's just her, I think her athletic background coming into play. She was a college hockey player. She was a pretty high level power lifter. We did a podcast with her. You can go listen to it. But she's really good at putting blinders on, even on like a daily basis. And she'll have moments, but for the most part, it's what can I do each day? And she has this, it's called like a one journal or something. And it's an electronic journal, and she updates it every day, and I get to read it. And I don't know if this is intentional, like if it's just a rule that she set out. It's never something that like I didn't talk about this, but she doesn't talk about the CrossFit Games in the journal. She doesn't talk about that goal. She doesn't really even talk about, open goals or quarterfinal goals or
And
Semifinal
her
goals.
life revolves, you could easily say her life revolves around getting to the CrossFit Games.
Yeah, she's pretty much a full-time athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And the journal entry is about the day. And that is it. And I think there's a lot of power in that, because the only thing that is what is within her purview every single day is what is right in front of her, the day. What happened yesterday doesn't matter. What's going to happen tomorrow is completely out of your control. You have today. And I really appreciate when someone can go through, like someone who is very talented and has a very good shot at doing well in semifinals this weekend and qualifying for the games. I can appreciate when someone like that can walk through life being so like process oriented, because it reaffirms that attitude is what gets you to the top. People who hyper focus on the goal and the achievement and getting to the CrossFit Games, probably less likely to get there.
I do think that having these big goals, like I think about myself training for Boston in the winter, and there were moments where I thought, I don't want to go out there. And I had a goal for the day. It's in my programming. So let's say it's running 10K. Don't want to go out there. And in the back of my mind, I can say, Alex, you're running Boston in April. You better get your ass out the door. You can use that for motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And there is value in those bigger goals. But it's not, Alex, you need to run a 3:15 in Boston. Like, why? I don't think it actually, for me at least, it doesn't impact my training that day to have a specific time goal. Maybe it does, but for me, it's more like I want to run Boston and I want to run it as fast as I can run it, which requires me to train.
Yeah.
So I better get my ass out the door.
And then imagine I
don't want to just run Boston.
No.
Like I said, it's like you have the goal, you have the time, which the time was solid for me because it was April 18th. The result was fluid, and that was within my control.
And the result ended up being better than your like initial kind of time goal.
Yeah, I never even set a time goal. It was I was going to do the best that I could do.
Yeah.
I knew approximately how fast I could run it, but my goal was never sub 3:10. I never had a time goal. I was like, I think I can do this. Be nice, because I think that's my potential. But it was like, if I came in at 3:11, I wouldn't have been disappointed.
No, I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think you could be. But what
like,
I mean is, like, your initial training paces were a 3:15 marathon. Now, had you said, well, I ran 3:22 in Chicago, I'm gonna run 3:15 in Boston. That is my goal. And you stuck to those training paces, and you never ran much faster. And you went there and you ran a 3:15 and you finished, and you thought, like, I probably could have run a few minutes faster. But 3:15 was your goal, so you stuck with it, rather than I'm going to go at it and see what I can do.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I had a couple training runs where I was like, I'm just going to run as fast as I can for this duration and see how I hold up as a test. And I did pretty well. So I thought, you know what? I think I can actually increase my pace for the marathon.
Yeah.
But that's another story. I do have one story also on goal setting. I was running the San Francisco Marathon, which everyone knows about because I've talked about it many times. And it was my first marathon. And my dad, again, I've said this, but he was a 2:30 marathoner and he had run many marathons before. So he was around 60 years old when he ran it with me, and we did all our training together. And I went into the marathon not knowing much. I just knew sub 4 hours was considered good in quotes, because I'm like, I don't know. And so when we trained, they didn't have Garmin's back then, or at least I didn't have one. I had like a Timex, and we'd map the run to see the distance. And so I don't know my pace exactly. It was like average.
I bet they did have Garmin's, but they're like $800.
Probably. Aren't they still $800?
No, I was just going to correct myself there and say they were probably $2,000.
Yeah, probably. Well, anyways, I didn't have one. So the night before the marathon, I was like, okay, well, I need to figure out my pacing here, because they're going to have points where you can see where you're at in the course and you'll be able to pace yourself. And I said, I want to run sub 4. And my parents were like, what? No, you can run way faster than that. But I had set the goal at a sub 4 hour marathon. And sure enough, basically we had decided like, we're just going to run it as fast as we can. And I ended up running in 3:26. So it's like, I think timelines and hard goals can also put a ceiling on what you're capable of as well.
Yeah, that's one of my major beefs with them.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't know. I think people sell themselves short too often.
And there's a definitely a scale of people who are a little bit unrealistic about what they're capable of in that moment. And again, not in down the line, but in a certain moment on a timeline. And then there are people who sell themselves way too short.
Yeah, spectrum.
You've seen those people in CrossFit class.
It's like, dude, are you even sweating?
Yeah. I don't know. People are very interesting, but I think the big takeaway here, and I hope I hit home with this because I did give a lot of thought to this today, and it was very hard to convince me that that timelines were appropriate. And so I felt this was a bit of an impromptu podcast, but I felt the need to get on here and talk about this with you.
Well, you knocked it out of the park. So, and it's also one of my favorite topics, just like goal setting in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think, I feel very compelled to read this book now because I think it's going to reaffirm a lot of my beliefs in that there's not enough care and consideration put into goals, for people, and that they really should be treated with a much more like careful approach, more like a prescription drug, and just with complete and total respect for where the person is at, both mentally, physically, and what they can handle, what they're interested in handling.
Yeah.
And then what their why is.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of the big miss out there in the coaching space. So hopefully this was a helpful conversation to hear. And even if you disagree and think that timelines are a good part of goal setting, I hope there was something in here that you can take away with you. So anything else, Miss Parker? No,
Miss Root.
All right. Well, thank you for listening once again, and we will catch you on the next one.